That's the most surprising single thing. The ways in which we, the people, want to, smash up the things that actually keep the people free.
Er waart weer een spook door Europa. Het spook van nationalisme, populisme, verlangen naar de sterke leider.
And this is the curve that history sent us that we never expected.
In Hongarije lijkt premier Viktor Orbán stevig in het zadel te zitten. Zijn Fidesz-partij rekent op de absolute meerderheid. Orbán geldt in West-Europa als een provocateur, een populist, zelfs een dictator. Maar volgens de meerderheid van de Hongaren verdedigt hij essentiële waarden.
Here in Central Europe, we believe Hungary within the region has a story to tell and a perspective that is as valid as the Western European perspectives.
In zijn kruistocht tegen wat Orbán onnatuurlijke en wezensvreemde idealen noemt, vestigt hij een nieuwe samenleving waarin vrije media en onafhankelijke rechtspraak het zwaar hebben en ook het onderwijs in het geding is. Dit is Tegenlicht. Welkom in de hersenpan van Oost-Europa. Sinds kort moet een universiteit het ontgelden. En niet zomaar één. De CEU, de Midden-Europese Universiteit. Een bastion van kritisch denken.
I think some of these conflicts were inevitable. I think they were bound to explode at some moment.
De strijd tussen regeringen en universiteit is saillant, omdat de vestiging van de CEU begin jaren 90 gepaard ging met de overtuiging dat hier een nieuwe elite opgeleid kon worden, die de open democratische samenleving naar westers model moest vormen.
In a certain way, the West Europeans were seeing itself as the model that everybody is going to imitate. And to a certain extent, this was true because this was societies that people admire and basically want to live in. But there is a big problem with imitation. Every imitation, including the successful one, produces resentment.
De universiteit werd opgericht op initiatief van George Soros, een Amerikaanse multimiljardair en filantroop die zelf van Hongaarse komaf is. Soros is nu het middelpunt van een agressieve regeringscampagne die hem bombardeert tot staatsvijand nummer 1. En daarmee staat ook het voortbestaan van de universiteit op het spel. Een nieuwe onderwijswet trekt de legitimiteit van de universiteit in twijfel. In de archieven van het instituut treffen we professor Istvan Reef. Hij herinnert zich hoe de universiteit een droom vertegenwoordigde op het moment dat het communisme instortte.
Hello. The history of the university started not in Hungary, but started in Dubrovnik at the sea. And during the course of the 1989 Summer University, George Soros was invited there. And by that time it was obvious that communism was collapsing in East and Central Europe. And George Soros thought that perhaps it would be a good idea to set up an institution where students coming from all the countries of East and Central Europe could learn together, who would be able to talk to each other even at the time of grave conflict. So this is how the idea of the university was born.
As you can well imagine, this is a day of great pride and joy for me to see so many well-qualified people go out into the world.
Our mission is more important than ever. And what is our mission? Our mission is simply to get up every morning and teach people how to be free human beings.
Since when exactly has the CEU been declared an enemy of the state? That was at the gradual process?
Yes, but openly. It happened last year in April when the government decided to pass a new higher education law to set new conditions for the existence of especially this university. So in this situation, the government insists that those who think differently from the stated will of the majority are the enemies of the nation, are the enemies of the state.
Een universiteit die als vijand van de staat wordt gezien. Dat is des te opmerkelijker wanneer je bedenkt dat de leiders van de huidige regering studeerden op beurzen van George Soros of aan de universiteit zelf. Zoals regeringswoordvoerder Zoltan Kovac, volgens wie de universiteit een verkeerd gedachtegoed uitdraagt.
Did you enjoy studying there?
Yeah, I mean, it's a high-level institution. I was a historian, so in a kind of a non-political, non-ideological way, I was fulfilling my studies actually in a field which was 18th century British history. But again, now the thing is that what we see here is rather a misinterpretation of the existing world around us. For the past couple of years, especially since 2010, and especially in the arguments against Hungary and recently against Poland, we've seen an interpretation emerging according to which there is a so-called liberal interpretation of the world that is basically everything around us. It is trying to monopolize all achievements in Europe as liberal, whatever it means. And everybody who is going against this supposed unity or monolithic perspective on politics, how politics should be running, is not liberal or illiberal, as it was called. And when it comes to, say, CEU and the academic arena, you have to keep in mind that the academic arena is doing a lot, actually, to make that ill-conceived perception or conception of democracy even more widespread.
When this orchestrated attack started a year and a half ago, then it started by singling out 2 departments, and the 2 programs that were singled out was the sociology department for its Marxist tendencies or legacies, I should say, and where I am is the gender studies department for its feminism. I see why they singled them out.
History is much too interesting, much too unexpected. I think the single biggest surprise that history has delivered to us is a form of single-party, anti-pluralist, leader-driven politics that may be very damaging to the future of democracy itself, because the ultimate aim of these regimes is to create a political system in which they're in power forever.
The government took away the autonomy of the universities and appointed so-called chancellors that are centrally appointed representatives to execute the central will at the universities.
Az az ország, ami fantom ellenségeket képez saját polgárjaiból, saját fiataljaiból.
It is very easy then to change the atmosphere and turn the country into something completely different.
Tienduizenden studenten en burgers demonstreerden tegen de regering Orbán en de inbreuk op de vrijheid van onderwijs. Het mocht niet baten. De regering heeft geen zin in liberale doctrines die zich presenteren als universeel.
Now, our perspective is that first you have to be aware of the legacies and traditions you carry in your own countries. If you try to get rid of them, then an unnatural state of political behavior is going to emerge, which is going to make it impossible actually to make proper and good decisions for your own community.
Tradities en gewoontes in plaats van zogenaamd universele waarden. Dat is de verschuiving die plaatsvindt in dit deel van Europa. Om te begrijpen wat deze verschuiving heeft veroorzaakt, gaan we op bezoek bij een gerenommeerde Bulgaarse politiek filosoof, die de diepe kloof tussen Oost en West analyseert. Hij doceert in Wenen, Ivan Krastev.
Basically, part of the problem, particularly with some of the governments in the region, which you see with the Hungarians, what you see with the Poles, is a typical problem that you have with the second and the third generation of migrants. Because what happened in Eastern Europe in the last 30 years, basically, was a massive migration of the East to the West. not only on the individual level, but with our states. We adopted Western institutions, Western norms, Western way of life. And what you know from the history of the individual migrants is the first generation basically is experiencing these changes as a success. So you have the generation of Havel, who tries to show that East Europeans are more European than Europeans. But then comes the second generation. And this second generation is becoming much more sensitive about the second-class citizens. They're becoming much more aware of the importance of their tradition. They want to be recognized as equal, but also as different. And this is what I do believe we're seeing there. And this is why I do believe one of the major challenges going to be to try to understand the position of Central Europe in all its complexity. Because it's very easy to dismiss some of the concerns of the people in the regions, but you should understand that Central and Eastern Europe is going through something which social scientists call it moral panic. You have the feeling that the world as you know it does not exist anymore. You have so much vast changes that people cannot orient themselves, and they're very much in a position to overreact.
History is a very stubborn thing. You know, we're in Hungary here. Hungary had imperial rule until 1918-19, and then it had, 30 years of interwar authoritarian rule, and then it had communism from 45 right through to 89. No soil in which a democratic culture could develop, and then suddenly we think, hey, presto, let's go. And it's not because, Hungarians don't know what freedom is or have a taste for it, or they're kind of different from Western Europeans. I hate that condescension towards Eastern Europe. But these things take time. They take experience. You've got to build institutions, and they got to work themselves through into the soil of a place.
One of the major changes that we see with this nativist explosion in part of Central and Eastern Europe is that what is changing is the notion of normality. If in 1990s, normal was the West, and it was very much about political normalities. It was about democracy, it was about market economy. Now normality is much more used in a traditional cultural terms. Western Europe, in the way we know it to a certain extent today, in cultural and political terms, was very much the results of the 1968. There was a kind of a major cultural transformation that went through the West European societies. 1968 was also very important for Eastern Europe. It was the Prague Spring. It was the protest of the Polish students in March 1968. But in Western Europe, 1968 was about the rights of the individual. It was very much about the rights of minorities. In Eastern Europe, it was very much about the right of the nation. It was very much about sovereignty. It was the Czechs and the Poles trying to basically resist the Sovietization of their part of the world. I'm saying this because this is a major difference. This is a major difference in the way you understand freedom, you understand rights.
Even when they have democratic elections, they want to reduce the Constitutional Court, they want to eliminate free media, they want to get rid of free universities. And these things are the bastions of the freedom of everybody. And yet they are described by these new leaders. They describe these institutions like courts, like universities, like free media, as kind of elite conspiracies against the majority. No, these institutions are what keep everybody free. And this is a surprise. I never thought that majority rule would become uncoupled from minority rights protections regimes, constitutional rule, independent judiciary, free media, free universities. I never thought democracy would be used against these guarantees of freedom. But that's the most surprising single thing, the ways in which we, the people, want to, smash up the things that actually keep the people free. And this is the curve that history sent us that we never expected.
Het nationalisme en populisme van de regering Orbán werd aangewakkerd door de vluchtelingencrisis van 2015. Hongarije bouwde binnen enkele weken een hek van 500 kilometer om vluchtelingen en migranten tegen te houden. En startte een propagandacampagne gericht op angst voor alles wat vreemd is.
Tehát Magyarországnak egyetlen migránsra sincs szüksége. Tehát ahhoz, hogy a magyar gazdaság működjön, a magyar népesség fönnmaradjon, hogy Magyarországnak legyen jövője, ahhoz nekünk nincs szükségünk egyetlen migránsra sem.
We rijden met de burgemeester van het grensstadje Kubekasa naar het hek.
Ott az életükben, hogy itt mindig is volt migráció. Én egyikben se láttam, hogy terrorista lett volna, kisgyerekek, idősek, felnőttek, nem csak férfiak, hanem nők is, családosok is. Nekem a szívem megesett rajtuk, mert láttam azt, hogy nagy nyomorúság elől menekültek, és én azon gondolkodtam állandóan, amikor őket láttam, hogy vajon mi mit csinálnánk magyarok, hogyha valaki egy bombát robbantana meg mondjuk a falunk közepébe. Úgy gondolom, hogy mi is fognánk a sátorfánkat és mennénk.
Újra.
Ez a megyei lapunk. Ez a megyei lapunk. Minden nap megjelenik egy ilyen hirdetés. Ennek a hirdetésnek költsége szerintem minimum 1 millió forint per nap. A lapot pár hónap ezelőtt megvette Orbán Viktornak az egyik embere, tehát tulajdonképpen a megyei lapunk egy magánlap, és hát a kormányzat úgy igyekszik ki stafírozni, úgy támogatni ezt a lapot, hogy fizetett hirdetést, semmit mondó fizetett hirdetést jelentett meg naponta a médiába, és hát ezzel juttatja őket állami forráshoz, magyarán mondva pénzmosás történik. Tehát ez a biznisz, ez a menekült válságos biznisz, ez tulajdonképpen nem csak a hatalom koncentrációját jelenti, hanem tulajdonképpen egy pénzmosás is.
Why is Mr. Soros an enemy of the state?
Well, Mr. Soros made himself a symbolic figure with illegal migration and migration issues. But very obviously we know that Mr. Soros's actions, his activities, the framework, the network he's built for the past couple of decades goes beyond migration. It's a different worldview, which in many respects actually is reflecting the differences we've been talking about here. If someone believes that mass migration on an intercontinental level is not a bad thing and a danger to your everyday security and causes and poses major threats actually to the borders and territorial integrity of European member states and Europe itself, but it's something desirable and you incite it, and you soften up the rules actually by which migrants by tens or maybe hundreds of millions can move around the globe, I believe it's really alarming, isn't it?
When the second Orbán government came into power in 2010, the emphasis shifted from our belonging to Europe, our belonging to the West, to the emphasis of our Christian roots and the fact that Hungary has always tried to defend the West from the forces coming to destroy it. This is what Hungary did, according to the Orbán government, already in the 13th century, fighting against the Mongolians. This is what we did against the Ottomans. This is what we tried to do during the Second World War. And this, according to the Prime Minister, exactly what we are doing today when we try to stop the flow of refugees.
Step by step, in a hidden stealth way, as we say, European institutions are trying to take away elements of sovereignty, which again, we believe belong to us, and we weren't ready and we are not ready to give up, say, determine who shall we live together in a country, who shall be coming to this country without the consent of a territorial state.
Het fundamentele verschil tussen mensen die de wereld mondiaal zien en degenen die lokaal kijken, wordt duidelijk tijdens een ontmoeting met 2 studenten. Ze studeren aan verschillende universiteiten en dat blijkt een flinke invloed te hebben op hun opinies.
they are always building on the fears of the people they have about migrants, like dark-colored skinned people, taking away jobs, taking away money, taking away everything. And if you have the control of fears, you have everything. You won. That's the thing they have, and that's the thing we try to make people just think about, that they don't have to fear. It's not necessary to fear in your life. You just live it without fears. You have to live it without fears, because that life you live with fears is shit, if I can use this word.
You were explaining to me before that...
Yeah, something totally different.
Okay.
Yeah, I can tell you that.
Yeah.
So I think that what I have already told you, that Hungarian history was totally different from the Western history. So it was like we lived together with the Austrians. We were under oppression of the Turkish Empire, like the Ottoman Empire, then under oppression of the Austrian kings. So like the Hungarian soul, I think, at least my soul, is totally different from a Western, like from a French person. And yeah, we can talk about fear, we can talk about anything else. But the main point is that I think that our soul is much different. But I think Hungarians, yeah, we can say that they are afraid, but they want to keep their country, because we had a much bigger country like before, 100 years before.
What makes this narrative so powerful or successful?
One element that makes it successful, it's reliance on national sentiments. That although it seems that we Hungarians have always been victims, in fact, we have always been martyrs and heroes. And to a certain extent, today, even today, we are heroes, which the world does not want to recognize. The world has never, ever recognized that. This is what makes it powerful.
Listen, for East Europeans, and this is the major difference of the experience of the 20th century, Eastern Europe was experiencing its 20th century as a victim. And by the way, this is why it's so difficult for us to recognize the victimhood of others. So this is a major story. And this idea that basically history is a tragic thing, that bad thing can happen, that every political project is a fragile one, and everything can go wrong. I do believe this is very much in the way Central and Eastern Europe was experiencing its identity. In the West, what has happened because of this kind of a long 70 years of success and others, the idea of this type of post-national identity and so on, this is much more the idea that the world is the place to be made by us. For Central and East Europeans, the world is much more things that happen to us.